Hi everybody, welcome to this week's video. When we talk about Korean culture today, we talk about the phenomenon of what's called Hallyu, the global dominance of South Korean culture through K-pop, K-dramas, K-film, K-cosmetics, K-beauty, and more. Korea today is a major influencer of global culture. As we have discussed, the Silk Road was an earlier kind of globalization, in which global culture was shaped by pan-Asian alliances, conflicts, and rich cultural exchanges. But what's classic Korean literature, and how can it help us understand global Asian culture today? I'm going to help you explore this question through the 17th century novel Kunmong, or as it's called in English, The Nine-Cloud Dream. This novel was written by Man-jung, a political advisor and writer in the Joseon Dynasty. The Nine-Cloud Dream is a Korean novel, but it's written in Chinese and it's set in the Tang Dynasty period of China. To understand the complexities of the novel, we're going to need to understand Korean history leading up to the Joseon period, and also to look at the life of the author Kim Man-jung. I'm going to then conclude by talking about the major themes of the novel and its significance in modern Korea today. Classic Korean culture was shaped by rich political, philosophical, artistic, and demographic borrowings between different Asian cultures like China and Japan, and the wider Silk Road connecting East Asia to the Middle East. Korea borrows Buddhism and Confucianism from China, adapting these traditions to make its own unique cultural atmosphere. You have a long tradition of political alliances and diplomatic relations between Korea and other Asian kingdoms, such as between the kingdom of Shilla and the Tang Dynasty. You also have a pattern of Korea defending its land and unique cultural identity from Chinese and Japanese military invasions. Like China, Korea would develop political myths of prehistoric kingdoms and virtuous rulers that subsequent dynasties would lay claim to. The first and original Korean kingdom identified by classic Korean histories is Gojoseon, or Old Joseon, which lasted between 2333 BCE till 108 BCE. According to Korean myths, Gojoseon was founded by the virtuous ruler and god king Tangun, who was the son of the heavenly prince Hwanung and the bear woman Ongnyeong. According to legend, Hwanung is the son of Hwanin, or the Lord of Heaven, and he wishes to explore the human world. He descends to the Korean peninsula, alighting on a sandalwood tree on the Taebaek mountain. A bear and tiger come to the tree to pray to Hwanung, who promises to make them human if they eat his food, and stay within a cave with him for 100 days. The tiger is too impatient and leaves, but the bear stays, transforming into a beautiful woman who makes offerings to Hwanung. Hwanung eventually has a child with her called Tangun, who, as the legend goes, is the founder of the Gojoseon dynasty. The Gojoseon dynasty collapses in 108 BCE after a series of invasions launched by Emperor Wu of China's Han dynasty. This leads to Korea's Three Kingdoms period of civil war, where political power in the peninsula splits between Goguryeo, Bakche, and Shilla, fighting for dominance with one another. It's also during the Three Kingdoms period when Buddhism is introduced to Korea from China. Buddhism is first introduced to Goguryeo in 372 CE, Bakche in 384 CE, and Shilla in the mid-400s CE. Shilla is a particularly fascinating kingdom in that it's ruled by a series of powerful queens, starting with Queen Sundok. Shilla's path to dominance begins with Queen Sundok, who aligns with Emperor Taizong of the Tang dynasty to gain political strength and to defeat the other two kingdoms of the Korean peninsula. The unified Shilla kingdom reunites the entire Korean peninsula under a single dynasty for the first time. Under the Shilla dynasty, Korea imports Tang-era administrative and bureaucratic innovations. It strongly patronizes Buddhism and imports Buddhist learning from China. As we recall, it's under Taizong that Xuanzang brings back and translates and teaches Indian Buddhist scriptures, creating a reinvigorated, dynamic Buddhist intellectual center in China. These diplomatic and cultural exchanges with the Tang dynasty helps to develop indigenous Korean culture through interpretations and creative synthesis with local cultural, spiritual, and artistic practices. Shilla will eventually fall to the Koryo dynasty, but I'm going to skip ahead and talk about the next major dynasty that will rule over the Korean peninsula, the Joseon dynasty that rules Korea from 1392 to 910, the longest-running dynasty of Korea. General Yi Song-gae revolts against the Koryo dynasty in 1392 and crowns himself king, naming his new dynasty Joseon, after the legendary Gojoseon kingdom, invoking the legendary origins of Korea's sovereignty. The Joseon dynasty continues to deeply shape modern Korea, both North and South Korea, particularly their cultural norms, customs, family life, language, historical identity, and more. Because the Shilla dynasty was closely aligned with important Buddhist shrines, which become centers of power in their own right, the Joseon dynasty pushes back against Buddhism and instead heavily patronizes Neo-Confucianism, the ideology that developed in China's Song dynasty, by integrating Confucianism with Buddhism and Taoism. In fact, after the Qing conquest of China in 1618, the Qing being a dynasty that originated in the north in Manchuria, Korea saw itself as the heir and protector of Chinese culture and Chonghua, or Confucian values. Of course, Korea would demonstrate its ability to indigenize Chinese cultural influence to develop a new innovative cultural identity. For instance, you have King Sejong the Great, who ruled from 1418 to 1450, who created the Hangul writing system for the Korean language in 1446. The Korean language till this day is written with the Hangul script. Nevertheless, you do see the incredible influence of China live on in, number one, the institution of a bureaucracy based on the ideal of merit, where officials get appointed from the results of a statewide examination system. Two, Neo-Confucianism becoming the official religion. And three, Neo-Confucianism coming to influence Korean family life through its core values of Confucian rituals, deference for elders, and gender hierarchy. So Buddhism gets sidelined from the official state religion, but it is still deeply practiced amongst the public. We will see this deep entanglement between Confucianism and Buddhism play out in the novel as well. Now let's talk about the author of our novel. Kim Man-jung lived from 1637 to 1692, and his period coincides with the time of decline for the Joseon dynasty. Kim Man-jung was a political advisor to Kim Seok-jong, who was a weak and tyrannical king. Kim Man-jung was a brilliant Neo-Confucian scholar who gained an influential bureaucratic position at court after passing the state examinations. Kim Man-jung was also a devout Buddhist. So there are some clear parallels between his earlier life and that of Xiao Yu, the protagonist of the novel, who also rises to a high position from a humble background after passing the state exams in Tang, China, and who was a Buddhist disciple in his previous life as Saint Chen. To grasp the politics of this time period influencing the novel, you have to understand the royal harem as part of an epicenter of the political system. In the Asian court system, the emperor normally took wives, consorts, and concubines from important families that represented political factions and parties. The two most influential women in Man-jung's time were Queen In-hyeon, who was King Seok-jong's official wife, and also part of what was called the Western faction at court, and Lady Jong, the most beautiful woman in Korea according to reports, and who was part of the Eastern faction. This part of the background story plays out like a K-drama. Queen In-hyeon was virtuous, kind, and devoted to upholding the state and the Confucian moral code. According to reports, Lady Jong was very much the opposite. She was opportunistic, ruthless, and also reportedly a dabbler in black magic. Lady Jong gave birth to a son of King Seok-jong's, and thus gained a great deal of power over him. Man-jung was also part of Queen In-hyeon's Western faction. So over the course of King Seok-jong's reign, Kim Man-jung takes an active stand and does the part of a virtuous Confucian state counselor by giving honest advice to the king in favor of upholding the moral system and the stability of the state. For doing so, Kim Man-jung is exiled from court several times, most notably in 1674, 1687, and 1689. Eventually, Queen In-hyun dies, and according to investigations, the culprit is Lady Jong, due to her vociferous practice of black magic over Queen In-hyun. Kim Man-jung writes the Nine-Cloud Dream during his final exile, which ends with his own death of natural causes. Reportedly, he writes the novel to comfort his mother, who had struggled for long years to educate him and his brother, and who was distressed at seeing him disgraced and banished from court. So when you read about the delights and accomplishments of Xiao Yu's career, ask yourself, is the novel a kind of wish fulfillment for what Kim Man-jung's life would have been had he been serving under a virtuous emperor? How do we relate to the story of Xiao Yu and of Sing Chen in context of the biography of the author Kim Man-jung? Ironically, the Western faction comes back in power after Lady Zhang's death, but by then it's too late. Kim Man-jung has passed away by then as well. Let's talk about the core themes of the Nine-Cloud Dream. One core theme that we have been talking about in context to Buddhism is the theme of self-cultivation, the spiritual development that we gain through detachment, compassion, virtuous practice, and meditation. In the novel, we can see the cultural evolution of the concept in Asian culture, that is, the ideal of self-cultivation as aesthetics and beauty. We can see the continuing influence of this concept in K-pop and K-drama today. The beauty and accomplishments of Xiao Yu and his 8 consorts represents the importance in Asian culture of cultivating one's appearance, intellect, and morality, of perfecting your education, of perfecting your conversation, of embroidering and embellishing your poetic and literary accomplishments, of really developing your abilities in music and dance, and heightening your emotional intelligence. The constant allusions to Chinese music, arts, and poetry in the novel shows Xiao Yu and Kim Man-jung's mastery of elite culture that was to become a source of inspiration for Joseon Korea. So as you read the novel, think about the characters in connection with the value of self-cultivation as beauty and aesthetics. A second core theme is that of blended spiritual beliefs. We can see the influence and synergy between Buddhism and Confucianism in the lives of Sing Chen and Xiao Yu. One question to ask yourself as you read is, how are the two related? Which value system prevails over which life cycle? Are there places in which the two value systems reinforce one another? And are there places where the two seem to contradict one another? A core theme that we see in the novel is also Korea's concept of Musangam, which derives from Buddhist teachings. Musangam refers to the impermanence of youth, love, beauty, and life, and also to the constant presence of change in the material world. So, what does it mean to structure the novel as a dream within dream in context to this concept? How does Musangam help us to connect with and understand the ultimate meaning of reality in the novel? A fourth core theme is that of love and sexuality. You will find that Sing Chen and his karma with the 8 fairies plays out in the relationships of Xiao Yu with his 8 consorts. Nevertheless, one thing to keep an eye out for is the compatibility of eroticism with platonic love and spiritual love. The 9 characters are deeply and spiritually related to one another due to the karma in their past life. Additionally, the novel describes the erotic nature of Xiao Yu's relationships with the women. The fact that not only does he feel desire for each of them, but that each has very different personalities and represents a different nuance of erotic desire. Finally, think of the deep, enduring relationships that the women have amongst each other. As some of my students have pointed out, it often feels like the relationships that the women have with one another are more powerful and compelling in some ways than what they have with Xiao Yu. When you read the descriptions of the different relationships, think about the ways in which friendship and eroticism coexist in very compatible ways in the novel's cosmos of relationships. Classic literature becomes classic because it continues to influence contemporary culture. The Nine-Cloud Dream also has a very long cultural footprint in modern Korean culture today. I'd like to finish by talking about some of the key adaptations of the novel in literature, music, film, and gaming. The Nine-Cloud Dream is referenced by numerous modern Korean novels, but one example that I want to highlight is novelist Choi In-hoon's 1962 novel adaptation, which he also called Kunmong, or the Nine Cloud Dream. Choi was born in North Korea, but he fled to South Korea during the 1950 to 1953 Korean War. In his literary adaptation, Choi takes the core themes of the novel and adapts it to voice political critique of the political authoritarianism in both North and South Korea, and to express the pain of the military demarcation line that continues to act as the border today between North and South Korea, separating the people and family members from one another. Another example of the novel's influence is the K-pop singer Jung-hwa's 2016 album, which is titled The Cloud Dream of the Nine, directly referencing Man-jung's book. She also has a song in the album based upon the novel's core themes, which is called The Dreamer. K-pop is notable for its wide range of allusions to Western and Asian culture and literature. For example, a favorite example of mine is the 17th song Don Quixote. Jung-hwa's album is yet another example of K-pop's literary cosmopolitanism and of Kunmong's influence. And one of my favorite adaptations comes from the gaming universe, the 2021 Sims game, The Cloud Dream of the Nine, which flips the genders of the nine major characters. Xiao Yu becomes a girl trying to make her fortune by navigating an unstable political landscape, and the nine fairies become nine men that she meets and forms relationships with along the way. As in the novel, each of the nine love interests in the game represents a certain aesthetic style, corresponding to their personality and attributes. So we can see that Man-jung's novel not only spoke to the politics, aesthetics, and philosophies of Joseon period Korea, but that it continues to influence our global culture today. With that, we have reached the end of the presentation. Cheers and happy reading.